In episode number 438 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover Patty Jenkins's history on the Wonder Woman films.
We also have a photo shared by Zack Snyder, which shows Wonder Woman Crimean from Batman v Superman.
Our comic book review this week, as chosen by you, is Future State Harley Quinn number 1.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am Mystery Troop Daniel.
And I am Emperor Kelli.
For those of you new to the show, the way we format it is first we go through some news, we head into our Patreon shoutouts, which are thank yous to those of you who make today's show possible, head into our comic book review as chosen by you, and end it with the Broke Hep Block, which is what Kelli and I have been doing this week.
It is a little bit of a lighter news week rolling into the new year, but still a lot of great stuff to talk about. So kicking it off with some Wonder Woman news. In an interview on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, Jenkins had a lot of fear and mistrust when it came to the first Wonder Woman film. According to Patty, the studio just wanted her to execute their ideas rather than bring her own vision to the movie.
And there was quite a bit of retraction happening, especially on Twitter. But first, let's talk about the initial reactions that we had, especially with this interview where she said, quote, "They wanted to hire me like a beard. They wanted me to walk around on set as a woman, but it was their story and their vision. And my ideas, they didn't even want to read my script. There was such mistrust of a different way of doing things and a different point of view. So that was definitely happening. Even when I first joined Wonder Woman, it was like, yeah, okay, but let's do it this other way. But I was like, women don't want to see that. Her being harsh and tough and cutting people's heads off. That's not what... I'm a Wonder Woman fan. That's not what we're looking for. Still, I could feel that shaky nervousness on their part of my point of view." End quote. Kelli, you're a woman. Do you want to see a harsh and tough Wonder Woman decapitating people?
I mean, why not? She's a warrior. My favorite moments, I always go back to the No Man's Land scene in Wonder Woman 1, where she was tough and harsh and just going out there and, killed a lot of people. And that was something that I really felt was missing out of the second one, because she was like way too soft in the second one. And that totally pulled away, I mean, not just from her being a woman, but her being Wonder Woman. Like, that's just who she is. So if it was done the right way, yes, it would have been fantastic. You know, if they, I don't know. I feel they could have handled it the right way. It would have been fine. I would have enjoyed it. It would be different if she was like cruel and horrible cruel and like, I'm cutting people's heads off because I feel like it. Like, and she wouldn't have done that.
And we've seen that in the comics, this aggression. This isn't even like an Elseworlds thing. We've seen it in the main continuity of Wonder Woman, twisting people's heads and beheading them, killing them, using her sword, using her shield, while still fighting for hope and love. So you can have that balance between the two. You see those two sides of Wonder Woman, but if you're her enemy, you're going to see that war and that rage, and she's going to bring that to you. So with this quote, you could see how it can be misconstrued, that beginning of, they just had me on as a beard, and then she says even on Wonder Woman. So it sounds like she got it towards a lesser extent, but not quite to that level, but she was still criticizing that production.
That's definitely what it sounded like to me when I read this, is her saying, like, when she stepped into Wonder Woman, this is what they were doing. They were using her as a beard, which for me was disheartening. I don't even know the right word, because, she was so behind Wonder Woman and saying, yes, I had all this control and I did all these things and I'm very proud of it. And then to hear her come back and be like, oh, well, none of it was really mine. Like, that's frustrating to me, because it's like, why didn't you say something sooner if that was the case?
She did go on to say in the interview that Zack backed her up when she did have ideas or wanted to make some changes. So we know that off the bat, it wasn't like a Zack versus Patty thing, although it does get a little interesting, especially with what Zack shared the very next day. But with her saying that, cutting people's heads off, this was a different Wonder Woman. And then we got what she and Jeff Johns put together in 1984. I can see that, some people are now saying, well, by them saying, let's follow Snyder's universe, that it was a good thing that maybe she was kind of pulled back a little bit. And this is where you can have this conversation of how much artistic freedom do we give someone, and how much do we want to follow a certain vision, which is another artist's as well. So it's kind of like, are you restricting one by saying, all right, well, let's see what you want to do, but still stay within this universe? So there's a whole debate that can come out of this. I will say, much like you, I'm happy with the first Wonder Woman that we did end up getting. You and I enjoyed the film very much. The sequel was very different, and if that's because they gave her more control, we don't really know quite yet. It sounds like they did give her more control, and she wanted to make a Wonder Woman television type of homage with this sequel, and it felt more like that, as you heard in our review last week. But this whole bit about her feeling more like a beard than anything else, yes, it is disheartening, but it raises a lot of questions as to what this means when you compare the two films.
That's a great point, because I didn't even think about that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yep, you can. That would make a lot of sense where the difference was. And let me tell you, that probably almost hurts her more, because I heard nothing but rave reviews for the first Wonder Woman, and now not so great reviews for the second. So people are going to look at that and say, well, okay, you just told us that you had much more control over the second one than the first. Maybe you shouldn't get all the credit for the first one that we gave you.
Does that make you a little nervous about the final film in the trilogy that we are eventually going to get?
Absolutely. And do I think they're going to go back to follow Zack's vision? No. And it very clearly tells me that the things we enjoyed the most about the first one, the understanding of the character, of her background, of growing up in Themyscira, because I don't care if she's lived on her, in the land of man for 50 years now, she wouldn't abandon all those things she learned from Themyscira, because the movie opens with her fucking saying, I learned all these things from Themyscira, right? And then she pretty much abandoned all of them throughout the whole movie. So those pieces that we got in the first one, I can pretty safely say that was kind of Zack saying this is kind of the direction that it should go. And Patty is, I get it. She loves the character, but her Wonder Woman is very different from my Wonder Woman, and I guess that's okay.
I do want to give Patty a lot of credit, though, with the first film, in which she had to execute the idea. Whether it was Zack's or hers or merging between the two, it was executed really well and much better than what we got in the sequel. I will lean a little bit more on the optimistic side in saying, when she referenced the third film and she said, Jeff and I had an idea for where it would go next, but now I don't know. That sounds like Jeff is out of the picture, and I hope he is. So it'll depend on who the other screenwriter is. And I think they're going to look at the box office numbers, the reviews that we got from the sequel. They're going to compare it to the first and say, all right, as much as we say, don't listen to fucking reviews, the studio is going to. That's what they do. And they're going to say, okay, what's the common factor here? Wonder Woman 1 was a lot darker. Reviewers seem to enjoy that more. And obviously the box office was amazing compared to 1984, regardless of what kind of state we are in right now theatrically. They're still going to look at those numbers, and hopefully, if they're smart, they will look at that and go, all right, well, let's go back to that direction and try to pull from what the first film tonally was enjoyed.
One can only hope.
And again, this is where it gets interesting, because while speaking with Comic Book Debate, Zack Snyder the very next day showed a never-before-seen image of Wonder Woman from the Crimean War.
You lost your mind when this came out. First, it was real grainy in the background, and you guys used your CSI technology to look at the reflection in the hubcap of somebody's car and enhance it like 14 times until it was very clear.
Yep. We didn't even need to do all that, because later in the day, he showed off a high quality image of what it was, which it was different than what he had hung up at his home. We analyzed the pictures and it was a different take.
Oh my God. Why am I even surprised anymore? I shouldn't be.
What was the big deal? Why did the internet get angry and excited at the same time over this very different image that was originally what Batman, Lex Luthor, I guess, has a picture of, and Wonder Woman is trying to get back?
I mean, there were a lot of cool looking guys. That was it.
Just a couple guys.
Just a couple bros. It's definitely Wonder Woman holding a bunch of severed heads.
And then that time period in which Zack later referred to it as 1854 Wonder Woman it does have, once again, a diverse group of fighters. So you have someone that looks like a samurai era fighter. You have, I think, a British bearded guy next to her. Or some, it was, and then you have the Native American as well, which we got in the first Wonder Woman film, and then what looks to be an assassin behind all of them, someone that's hooded. It looked like there were. I'd have to pull up the picture again. I don't know if they were all a part of the group, but
you don't have it printed out sitting on the desk yet.
Not yet. No. But this photo again, it was back when the concept was to be of Ares going throughout all of these ages, and Wonder Woman is chasing Ares. He put it on Twitter by saying, this was Zack, quote, "The amazing shot of Stephen Berkman of an Elseworld war-weary Diana who had chased Ares across the battlefields of the world and had yet to meet Steve, who would help her restore her faith in mankind and love itself," end quote. So a different Wonder Woman than what we saw even in the first one.
I think that would be such an amazing story to follow, and I hope maybe we get in a comic book or in something else, but definitely really impactful that you would essentially have this first movie where she's just angry and downtrodden and trying continually to save the world and just can't and is exhausted and kind of hashtag done with it all. And then you get to, the second movie or maybe even the second half of that movie is her meeting Steve and saying, okay, there are great people. There is love. There is good. This is why I'm doing all these things. And then finally having that power to overcome Ares, even though she had tried for like 100 years at that point.
I love that she's trying to chase down Ares. There's this already a rage between the two characters, a deep history aside from her learning it from a lesson, which was fine in the first film, but it would have been way more impactful if she's just chasing and finally gets him and sees the horrors of the world as all these wars that she's going through. And that I'm sure would affect her psychologically. And that also puts her on a very similar path that we saw with Superman and Batman. Batman, as we learned in BVS, he's already started to brand criminals. He is, as Alfred says, things are different now, Batman, and he says, we're criminals, Alfred. So he's a defeated man. He sees the Kryptonian as a threat immediately, and then by the end, he makes that change of men are still good. Superman goes through the same thing of not everyone stays good, Lois, and then he is able to, he sacrifices himself for humanity, and he doesn't quite go down the path that Bruce does. And then you have Wonder Woman that, from this description, would have been a very similar take to it as Bruce, but maybe even darker because she would have been doing this for many more years.
Superman's listening to this podcast and he's like, so I'm Batman Steve Trevor. He just got so excited.
That's so true. That's really why he died. When he says, "You're my world," he's referring to Batman.
Yeah, that's it.
And this is not disparaging Superman, by the way. We've long since we've read the comics and seen the Justice League cartoons. In our mind, Superman is in love with Batman.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not even like a negative. It's funny and it's great and it's a better love story than Twilight, I guess.
It is 2021. We do not need to know about
what's
Twilight.
The common one right now?
It's not better than Bridgerton. So
all right,
don't even.
Is this concept, the 1854, Zack Snyder also said on Twitter that this image will not be replaced in the remastered edition, the IMAX edition of BVS that's coming out before Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's one theory that people thought of, okay, so is he going to correct that or is he going to input that? And he said that it would contradict Patty's amazing film, and that's how he put it. So he was very open to, no, this is not something that would then lead into, a Snyder Wonder Woman or anything like that.
Right.
On Vero, he said it'd be fun to do an animated film, which is pretty exciting to see. So like an Elseworld story is what he called it, but we're not going to get like all right, now we're really going to course correct into what's already been made. And even something like David Ayer's Suicide Squad, he has said that they didn't film any Steppenwolf fighting the Suicide Squad or any parademons coming down on them. It would instead be the original cut of what he wanted to make, tonally more like the Comic-Con trailer. So all of these ideas and concepts were well before they started filming.
I think it's a pretty amazing concept, though, and even for him to, he made this movie, this world with these characters in this specific time period, but even that he thought back to those characters' backgrounds in their previous life before this so much, so that because he knew that would influence like where they were right now, so he wasn't just like, oh yeah, they're just like this. Like, no, she's like this because of this, and then built a whole world and a whole story around that. This man doesn't sleep, clearly. But I just think that it definitely would have been a really great connection for all three that none of them would ever talk about, but that they went on the same journey and got to the same place and are now the ones leading the Justice League, leading this fight against Earth to save man, when at one point every single one of them was totally disparaged and thought that they weren't worth saving.
The idea of this savage Wonder Woman, or this more war-weary Wonder Woman, seemed like they were wanting to do that in the first film. Would that have affected your vision of or enjoyment of the first movie if she was still killing people in the movie, but instead was like decapitating them and it was a lot more violent?
I don't know, because I haven't seen it. I just point blank couldn't tell you, but I feel like it wouldn't have, because it didn't bother me that she killed people. It doesn't bother me that she uses a sword and a shield and is violent, because again, that's who Wonder Woman is. That is her entire upbringing, her entire world. Just everything that she's ever learned has been, we have to fight man. And we're going to train you to be the best warrior. And yeah, that involves killing and decapitating and doing what you have to do to get rid of bad people.
Hell, at one point in the New 52, she becomes the new god of war. I mean, there's so much history to it already for the character. Is it a coincidence at all that Zack chose to release this image a day after Patty made that quote of they wanted to cut off heads and they wanted a more violent Wonder Woman?
Let me ask you, and I'm just going to flip it back on you. Does Snyder ever do anything by coincidence?
Of course not.
Has there ever been a coincidence in the however many years that we've been pushing for this movie?
Did you see it as him kind of pushing against Patty, though? Maybe her words of, they wanted her doing this, and then him saying, this is actually, yeah, we wanted this right here.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Of course it was. He just didn't come right out and say that. But again, to see, and I don't know what the comments are, but we're speaking very positively of it. And it's probably to show her too, like, this would have been okay. You don't have to be like, women don't want this. There's a lot of women who would have been okay with it.
A lot of women were on Twitter saying, I'm a woman and I want this Wonder Woman. And it's just, they all celebrated this image of an unused concept. She also had a cape too, which people were saying that would have worked amazingly. And that's too bad that they didn't use it. One
of my favorite Wonder Woman moments, and it's so brief and we haven't talked about it in a long time, but when she's fighting Doomsday and he like hits her or whatever and she smiles. Like, that's one of my favorite parts too, because that shows that she thrives off this fight, off this war, off all these different kinds of things. And so yeah, maybe it becomes mundane after a while and she just chopping off heads because whatever, but that's cool. That's who Wonder Woman is.
When she sees this creature, this is one that won't go down easily. That it almost seems like. And then she gets up and she's like, all right, time to continue fighting this.
But it almost felt like she was excited. Like it had been so many years since she had gotten the opportunity to do that. So love it.
This isn't a very news-heavy week as far as comics or gaming, but we do have more here from the Warner Media side. Twitter it's like every day, what's going to happen, what's new, and it's like, oh my God, these awesome Zack Snyder images and this information about Patty Jenkins, and then back downward to Walter Hamada, who has signed a multi-year deal extension to remain president of DC Films. This was according to Variety.
The extension is through 2023, and Hamada will continue to report to Warner Brothers Picture Group Chairman Toby Emmerich.
Boo.
Boo.
This label is responsible for bringing all of DC's superhero canon to screens and streaming, including the recent Christmas Day release of Wonder Woman 1984.
Hamada succeeded former DC heads Jeff Johns and John Berg, releasing films like Aquaman, which did $1.4 billion worldwide box office, and New Line's Shazam.
So on Twitter, immediately we got the hashtag fire Hamada, hashtag recast Hamada. We were not at all happy with this decision by Warner Media, Warner Brothers, because this is still, it feels, even though he took over, this hasn't been a good run for Hamada. As we said last week, this was the same person who was fighting against the solo Joker film, which ended up being extremely successful. He did not want to greenlight the Snyder Cut, neither did Toby, and instead it's AT&T's doing of, no, let's get this done, let's put this money towards it. There's a movement, there's people that want to see this, and we have the streaming service coming out. Why aren't we taking care of things? And instead, these are the people like Walter who are behind these decisions that are like, all right, let's put out Shazam and Wonder Woman 1984, and these movies are not making money like they were back when the Snyderverse was just getting started.
Joke's on all of us. They're luring him into a false sense of security so they can investigate more and get rid of him too.
Well, we'll see what else comes out of the Ray Fisher situation, because he very publicly said that, I think it was last week, that he would not work under Hamada again due to his enabling behavior over what occurred on Justice League.
Well, I do say I have most of the answers to everything in the world. I won't say I have all of the answers. So I don't really know what they're thinking in making this decision, because obviously his track record, exactly like you said, hasn't been great compared to some of the other things that were happening, unless there have been a lot of discussions behind doors where they're saying, listen, this is what works, right? We've seen the numbers. We have the numbers. You have to be on board with these visions. You have to be more trusting of these things and make it happen. And I really hope that that's the case and that he's going to lean more towards, you said he wasn't a fan of the Snyderverse. Perfect. Now we're seeing how successful it is. So you're going to learn to be a fan of the Snyderverse.
Yeah, and that's going to be if he makes that change, it's going to be after the film releases, because in that recent interview, I think we had covered it last week, he had called it a cul-de-sac. Yeah. And that tells us already that his mentality is there's no future here, that this is more of AT&T's thing, and it's now up to the fan base to create that future again. And it's something that, again, we didn't even know that we had a chance at getting the Snyder Cut. We kept pushing for years, and then it finally happened. So it's like, if we can achieve this, then there's no discouraging us when it comes to the Justice League Parts 2 and 3 and getting those out there in film format, not even like settling for comic or animated. We want this live action. So that fight will begin later this year, and especially after Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it's our responsibility to make it a success, to promote it, to push it. Just like we say with comics all the time, if you want that character to continue, you have to physically buy the book. You can't just go on Twitter and demand the comic book. And while getting the Snyder Cut to happen did involve a lot of tweets and a lot of movements, it involved charity work as well. We put a lot of actions behind it that told them and got their attention and gave a lot of encouragement to not just everyone in the movement, but everyone that actually worked on the film. And I think we have to bring that same energy and more once this releases in March.
Absolutely. And you'll take a day and you'll really enjoy and celebrate where you came from, but then you will pick up those severed heads the next day and keep on pushing.
As we said, Ray does not want to work under Hamada, and that includes the Flashpoint film that they are making. And according to the Wrap, Cyborg's role in the Flash film has been written out of the script.
That's favorable over to recasting. So
I think so too.
I would rather them go that route. That's very unfortunate that we won't get to see him, but I stand behind him and his decision and why he's choosing to do that. And hopefully one day we'll be in a better place where he is able to pick up that role again, because I did really enjoy him the little bit that we saw of him as Cyborg, and I'm excited to see in the Snyder Cut what his role actually entails and all that heart that he'll bring to it. So I'm sad.
Me too. And when they were talking about recasting, there were talks of that, and we were immediately like, no, Cyborg. Ray Fisher is our Cyborg. No one else. We're not going to do any of this recasting stuff. And now that they're saying that they're writing him out of the script, and this film is still under Hamada's regime, we're now saying boycott Flashpoint, because we're not going to be there to support it now if Hamada is still in charge. So as a movement, we're on Ray's side on this one. We're going to stand behind accountability over entertainment. And if we have to boycott the Flash, then so be it. And I think that's where we stand right now until Hamada ends up moving on or gets demoted or whatever it is. I don't think there's going to be a lot of support for what he ends up releasing.
We'll see with him signed on for the next, I guess it's only 2 years now, but that's still a while. It's still a lot that could come out and be put into development and etc.
The Flash is currently set to start filming in April. It's going to be it's going to be interesting to see what happens a year from now, because we know Ben Affleck is going to have a role in this. Michael Keaton, of course. There were all those false articles of Michael Keaton being the Batman moving forward in that universe that ended up being false. We're not going to get Michael Keaton standalone films out of this Flash film. It seems like there was a lot of distractions already happening in media, and that was to distract us from Ray Fisher's stories and also from HBO Max's Snyder Cut. So already before the film comes out, the 2021 began, the promotion began from AT&T and HBO Max, and now the missiles have been launched, so to speak, from these bloggers and reviewers and these major articles to try to take the attention away from Zack Snyder's Justice League.
They will not succeed. We will keep pushing through. We will see their lies for what they are.
And speaking of the amazing HBO Max and the great AT&T, we do have this month's What's New on HBO Max, the January highlights.
This is not the full list. This is just what we're really excited about, what pertains to you, to our show, etc. You can go on Google and find the full list there, or, you know what, just log into HBO Max and you can just check them out right there.
First one on this list is my favorite from the Nolan trilogy, Batman Begins.
It is a great movie.
Moved on over from Netflix to HBO Max, and also, I think we might have covered it last month, but The Dark Knight Rises also got added on there, and that one was not on Netflix previously, so it's the first time in a while that we've been able to stream it.
Next up, we have Batman Beyond.
And also the amazing film Batman Beyond: The Return of the Joker. Both of these were on DC Universe, as well as some of these others that we'll touch on, but you can catch the Futureverse Bruce Wayne, which I reflipped through A Dark Knight by Paul Dini, and I don't know if you remember, but in the end, this book has been out for a couple years now, by the way, so don't get mad at the spoilers, and it's not a spoiler for the story itself, but he did say that there was an abandoned concept in Batman Beyond where instead of the Joker being dead from the start, the Batman had built a concrete cell in the Batcave, and would occasionally throw food in there, but as long as he heard laughing in the Batcave, he knew Gotham was safe.
That's spooky. Oh, I do not like that.
His own Arkham.
He would just occasionally throw food? The laughing could be in his head now.
I guess so.
Like, Joker could be gone. Oh, no. Why would you tell me this? No.
A much darker version, I think, than him just being dead.
Yeah, no, ooh, I don't like that.
We wouldn't have gotten the amazing Return of the Joker, too.
The movie still confuses me, but that's fine. Moving on, next on the list, we have Batman Death in the Family from 2020.
I streamed this the other day, and this was the one that was supposed to give us like the alternate versions of what if Jason Todd maybe had lived or had become someone else other than the Red Hood. And when I streamed it on HBO Max, it wasn't what the Blu-ray was. So they're still promoting it as only on the Blu-ray or the physical release can you see those alternate versions, which is really cool. This one was awful. It's a very quick recap of the film with like terrible narration by Batman. And then it has a bunch of DC shorts, which I've never seen before. And that's all it is. And I was like, this is not good at all. Like if you've never seen Under the Red Hood and you go straight to Death in the Family, it ruins that movie for you.
Huh. That's really weird that they would advertise it like that and then just be like, oh, but you should pick up the DVD to really see.
Yeah, so my highlight is don't watch this. Avoid this one.
Next on the list, I guess it's an okay show.
The greatest Batman anything of all time.
Batman the Animated Series.
The only downside to this, as pointed out by Scott from Lazy Gaming Guys in our Discord, is they put them in release order as opposed to production order. So part 1 and part 2 of these episodes are mixed up. You don't get them right back to back.
Right.
And it's awful. And I don't know why they did this. And I did tweet out to HBO Max as a suggestion, and supposedly they're going to pass it on. But at the very least, give us an option. And I don't know why on DC Universe it was released in production order. And on the DVDs, that's how they have it. But then on here, for whatever reason, it's all mixed up.
Terrible. Cancel the subscription.
Now they will fix it. They will do great. I believe in HBO Max.
Next on the list, Courage the Cowardly Dog.
My brother loved this show.
No.
Absolutely loved it. He was watching it the other day. As soon as I told him and texted him that it was on there, he was like, fuck yes. And I came over to my parents' and he was playing Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Oh, I watched a few episodes. It always came on at night, but you're talking about that abandoned concept of hearing laughter and knowing that would be on Courage the Cowardly Dog. Like freaky shit. I don't know. There is just that one with the slab. Didn't like that one. The one I always remember is when he goes down the bathtub and there's like some freaky mermaid in there. Didn't like that one either. Somebody mobile ordered the other day and their name was Mariel, and I was like, oh shit. Somebody get her food. Get her out of here.
Have you ever heard of the theory, and I don't buy into it, but it's still interesting, that it all looks that way to Courage because he's a dog, but in reality, they're mundane things, but he sees things as monsters and creatures and ghosts, and we're just seeing it through his eyes?
I mean, that would be pretty cool. I do like that theory a lot. I haven't ever heard it before.
And I only believe it because we have a dog, and the dog freaks out over every, like, little things that are like nothing, and they treat it like, this is war! Someone rings the doorbell, and it's a fucking threat, so I can buy into that concept, but I don't think that was the intention either.
Well, have you ever heard, I'm sure you have, the Rugrats theory that one of the twins is really dead or something like that?
No, I didn't hear that one.
Have you ever? Yeah, it was crazy. That's why listen, it's a whole theory, but like half the babies are really dead and they're just seeing these things. And it was, people make these shows really dark.
Yeah. The other one that my brother also grew up on, and it wasn't one that I got into, unlike Courage, it's Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
It's a boy show. It's not for me.
Not for me either, but many years later, I might dive in just to see if maybe I missed something, or maybe all these life experiences will make me appreciate this more, but we will find out.
The answer is no. You haven't missed anything, and it won't make you appreciate it more.
I did add Escape from New York on here. It's one I've always wanted to see. It inspired at least the character of Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid series.
What's it about?
That's as far as I know. That's literally it.
Because I was going to say, I think there was a Mary-Kate and Ashley Escape from New York.
Yeah, I don't think it's this one. They didn't even exist when this movie came out.
Well, we will have to check it out on the superior streaming service of HBO Max.
And the superior DC animated show from that era, I know Young Justice was celebrated and remembered, and that's the one that ended up getting more seasons, but I was campaigning for Green Lantern, the animated series. It only had one season, but it was awesome. Please check this out. Do not miss this pretty much hidden gem at this point.
Yeah, there were some definitely really, really great moments, really great call-outs to Space Zuko, where they essentially modeled the character of Razor after Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is just one of my favorite things. Set up for a really great second season, a really great love story, but at the time, I will say that I did like Young Justice better. They've thrown it into the ground like that melting man at this point. But the first season of Young Justice, first and second season, I really jumped on board. So I'm sad that both weren't picked up again, but it is wonderful that we still have this great first season to go back and watch.
Couple more left here. Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
I had just bought the Blu-ray and they added it on HBO Max, which I'm happy with. I like owning physical media anyway, but now I know that if I don't feel like putting in the Blu-ray, I can play it on HBO Max.
And the last one on this list is Pulp Fiction.
Considered by many one of the greatest movies of all time. Another one that had been a few years since I had seen it, so I'm probably going to go back and check this out as well. Another one that was previously also on Netflix, but now looks to be moving on over to the better service, as you said, HBO Max. Nothing wrong with Netflix. We still like Netflix, but HBO Max edges it out.
Speaking of, and I didn't mention it, Mad Max Fury Road, that took place in 2021, right?
Yeah, I saw that meme that you're talking about.
Where they're wearing like those little skinny clothes and somebody's like, so is it okay to wear this now or do I need to wait a few weeks?
It looked like, was it BDSM type of thing? Like leather and...
like chains and a little Speedo.
It's like, are we good?
It's time? It's 2021.
So great list. Awesome additions to kick off the new year on HBO Max.
Once again, you can find the full list on Google or when you sign into your HBO Max account. But now we can move on to our Patreon shoutouts of the week.
First one this week goes out to Matt on Twitter at Mr. Forklift. You can also find him at typingaboutmovies.com.
He retweeted from the Smithsonian Magazine, quote, "This week in 1990, the Leaning Tower of Pisa was closed for repairs. The problem? It was leaning too much, end quote.
That is something that I've had wondered. Like, have they since resecured it? Because it's got to keep moving over time.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I'm sure every now and again they have to resecure it just to make sure it's still at that angle. And have they since measured it so that it's perfectly always at the known angle and kind of corrected over the many years?
I'm sure that they do. You know, I've never been to Europe to see, you know, these great pieces of history, and I would love to. But a few years ago, probably 10 years ago now, God, how old am I? We went to Colorado and kind of out west and saw kind of some of the ruins there. And they essentially said, yeah, we very, I won't say very little, but there's still 10 to 20% of these ruins that they've actually introduced new things into to keep them looking like they did, or to preserve them. Because at the end of the day, everything breaks down eventually. And even though nobody's actively touching these things, it's still been so many years that they've introduced, and they try as hard as they can to get the same type of materials in there. But, you know, redoing some wells or bricks or different things like that so that people can still go and enjoy them. We can still have that piece of preserved history, because otherwise give it 20 years and it would all crumble and be gone.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the failed restorations like on famous churches, and they try to redo like the faces and they never turn out right.
No, never. You try your best. And then I do like that they still take some of those same materials that they would have used and make it mostly that. But at the end of the day, for us to keep enjoying these things, yeah, I'm sure they're doing construction on it all the time.
Next shout out this week goes out to Jared on Twitter at Spoon Sandwich.
He tweeted, quote, "Best wishes to Michael Bublé on his last day of freedom before he is locked away for another year," end quote.
People put away them Christmas albums pretty quickly. I went on YouTube and I saw, and he redid like so many Christmas songs that I did not know about. And I'm guessing this is the shit that people play every year when they have company over or when they're opening presents. Did you hear any Michael Bublé this holiday season?
I did, and he was actually on a Disney special singing some songs with his wife and his kids there. And I was watching with one of my best friends, and she's like, "Oh man, I love this song." I'm like, Who is this? I had no idea. Like, I've heard his name, but I had never seen Michael Bublé. So I did hear him. I heard Mariah, but now they are both gone back into hibernation until next year.
See you this holiday season. Another shout out is to Scott on Twitter at LazyGamingGuys and at Pandanime.
Scott has been streaming more Yakuza Like a Dragon. Their Christmas stream was called Yakuzmas.
I really wish they had titled it that, but I know they said they were worried that people wouldn't be able to find it or whatever, but it's officially Yakuzmas, and I'm sure this won't be the last time he tweets that or streams that game because he adores it. It was his favorite game of last year.
Have I made this show before? Do they sing like a virgin, but like a dragon?
I don't think you've made that.
Oh,
no.
Man, they should. Somebody write to these Yakuzma people.
Well, if there's enough weebs playing it, it might as well be called that, right?
Stop. And our final shout out goes out to Elizabeth at EP Lifts.
Elizabeth posted an image of her dog with the caption, quote, "Do I get Christmas dinner, mama?" End quote.
You're damn right you do. All dogs deserve Christmas dinner.
They beg for it, that's for sure.
Over and over.
Sometimes better behaved at certain households than others.
You know, we had Ace over my parents the other day, and there was leftover breakfast. And Mom's like, "Oh, Ace will eat eggs." And I'm like, "She doesn't at my house." And she's like, "She eats them, no problem here." I go, "Because there's another dog." And because Mom's like, "My dog won't eat eggs." And she put down the pan, and both dogs ate the eggs. And I was like, "See?
Of course.
See, of course, because they have to fight for it, I guess, because they don't get fed ever."
It's that same concept of when a kid's playing with a ball, the other kid wants it, but then when they switch to that other toy, then suddenly they want that toy too. Same exact thing. The dogs are just like 3-year-olds.
Oh boy, we got 2 3-year-olds. Oof. What were we thinking?
So huge thanks once again to Elizabeth, Scott, Jared, and Matt for your Patreon support this month.
If you too would like your shout out every single month for as little as $1 a month, that's just 25 cents an episode, one shiny quarter, you too can have your shout out.
Make sure to join our Discord lounge. There is a link on today's show notes, but that's where you can interact with a lot of Brocat Core members. And if you are a Patreon backer, you get access to the exclusive Discord lounge.
So as much as we would love to talk to you there, the best thing you can do is talk to your friends about the show. Let them know about us if they are in love with DC as well, excited about all the great things coming out with the Snyderverse. Obviously, I mean, we talk about it a little bit, I guess, sometimes, but definitely let your friends know about the show.
Let's head into, as voted on by you, our comic book highlight of the week.
Our comic book this week is Future State Harley Quinn #1 of 2. This is written by Stephanie Phillips with art by Simone DeMeo, and the colorist is Tamra Bonvillain.
It was a tie between this and DC Future State, The Next Batman. Palpa Kelli, of course, being that deciding vote, and you voted for Harley Quinn over The Next Batman.
I did. I wanted to see what it was all about. I know very little about Future State, and I will say that I did enjoy some pieces of this issue for sure.
As we've previously said about a lot of these Future State titles, these are kind of like trial periods. If you enjoy, pay attention most to the writing over the artwork, because a lot of these books are going to change artists come March. But this is the same writer, Stephanie Phillips, that's going to be handling the Harley Quinn title with the new #1 in March. The art is going to change, though, to Riley Rossmo, who I really, really like. I know he's a little too stylized for a lot of people, but me personally, I do like Riley's artwork. You saw him in the Robin King one-shot, so that'll give you some perspective on what you can kind of compare it to. But this take on Harley Quinn, just a heads up, there are going to be some mild spoilers on this highlight per usual, so there's your warning. But on this one, it represents the psychology side of Harleen, and it gives us a little bit of Harley Quinn, not a ton of action. I think we'll get that in issue 2. It's going to be a 2-parter, but it's interesting that they use her skills as a psychologist to try to bring down other villains.
That was one piece that I did, probably what I enjoyed most about this is oftentimes when they write Harley, yes, she's fun. Yes, she has that kind of, Looney Tune humor that we talk about and all this kind of stuff. But I feel like people either forget or overlook how smart she is, how much schooling she's been to, how much knowledge she has. Because whether or not she got good grades, she passed. Like, she made it through school. She worked in these different institutions and did well enough to get to her place where, she met the Joker and then ultimately went insane through him. So there's a lot more that Harley can bring besides laughs and flipping around and beating up people. And they definitely focus on that in this book, while you still get those other pieces as well. But really relying on her and saying, the police are unable to take these people down. We don't know what else to do. And she's able to look at the situation and say, here's what's going on in their mind. Here's how you're going to be able to get them to a place where you can ultimately lock them up and defeat them.
The one thing that I was confused on, this wasn't a far off future Harley Quinn, right? Like, yes, it was still in the future, but this isn't like old lady Harley or a descendant of Harley.
Right. That's what it seemed like to me for sure, is that it was the normal Harley that we have, even the normal Jonathan Crane that we have.
Right.
He just is different mentally. Something happened and his memory was wiped. He refers to it as his past life. So we don't know what the story is there, but it was, I could see maybe being, I don't know, between 5 and 10 years in the future, probably. If
you did enjoy the previous run on Harley, whether it's Jimmy and Amanda's or the one that just wrapped up in Rebirth, this is, as you mentioned, a very different side of Harley Quinn. It's not as Looney Tunes humor. It doesn't have a ton of dialogue like the older books did have, and it instead has a more serious take on the character. And that, to me, did give me some excitement over the ongoing series that is coming out in March, which we are subscribed to. And based on whether the Brokehead Core vote on it or not, we will discuss it on the podcast here. The artwork in this first issue I felt was too digitized. It's part of that kind of future of artists that do everything not just to accommodate iPads and tablets and all of that, but they do their work on a tablet as well. So the colors, the line work, the blacks, all of that doesn't pop like you would if you did it traditionally. And I don't know if it's because of the type of paper that DC has since switched on over to that doesn't really complement it too well. But to me, it looked too muddied up as I was reading it.
Yeah, I kind of looked at the first page and then just focused on the dialogue boxes and understood enough that, I noticed that there was an overlap. So you see these villains being arrested as she's telling you how to do it, which enjoyed that piece of it, but it was just, it felt very Batman Beyond-ish and kind of like they were trying really hard to make it futuristic and cool, but like what we thought was cool in the 90s, what we thought the future was going to be like in the 90s. That's really what it felt like to me. So yes, just like you, I paid very little attention to the art and really focused more on the writing.
If this were the same artist for the new ongoing, I would have canceled that subscription by now. But since it's not, and I think we both enjoyed the writing of this first issue at least, then I think we'll give that other one a shot when when number 1 comes out. I do want to give I want to throw some shade over at the next Batman issue though, because that issue was $7.99. And half of that book is an Outsiders comic book. It's not all the next Batman. And that's that same thing that we had covered when the Joker series got solicited of, all right, here's the comic book, and then here's extra content that you're going to be paying for. So as soon as I finished the next Batman story and it started the story about Katana, I was like, I don't care about any of this. And I'm a third of the way, maybe halfway through the comic book. So I paid for 2 comics and only wanted one of them. That's how I felt. Because it really is a $7.99 book. Most books are $3.99, and this one split in half. I thought it was bullshit. I was actually really upset. And if they keep doing that for the new series, it's like, at least give me the next Batman side story. But if you're just giving me, all right, here's Katana and the Outsiders and the Arkham Knight, I don't care about that right now. I bought this book for the next Batman.
And then what it turns out is it's like The Witcher, and you got 2 crazy stories and they just come together in the end.
I mean, I hope that happens, but I doubt it. Just extra content I didn't want.
I'm just trying to make you feel better. That's all.
Thanks. So there you have it. Thank you once again for voting in on this week's comic book highlight. We do put up that poll every Wednesday morning on our Twitter @ReasonsI'mBroke.
There's no wrong answer on that poll unless it's Sonic the Hedgehog.
Apparently. Or DC Death Metal, but that's over now.
Oh, yeah.
That was the last issue.
Oh, finally. It finally died.
Let's head into our final segment of this week's episode. It is the Brocat Block.
This is what Daniel and I have been up to this week, finally turning over into the new year out of that major holiday season that, I joke all the time. We get to Thanksgiving and then you and I see each other in the new year. We have to say goodbye. So anything big happening for you? Things starting to get back to normal?
I know last week I talked, I wanted to avoid any work talk and I wasn't in a good place. And so far it seems like 2021 is an extension of 2020 for me at least. So it's been a rocky start to the year, and I don't know if it's a lot of adjusting or whatever, but we have a new registry system that I've been learning, and anytime I have to learn something new after I've gotten good at the other thing, I feel really uncomfortable and insecure, and there's a lot of fear there. So I've just been adjusting to that new system, and that happens with every job that anyone's in for a long period of time. You're eventually going to have to switch how you do things, or changes are going to happen. And last year there were a shit ton of changes that we got through. So this is hopefully the last hurdle in a while, once I get comfortable with the program and figure out all the ins and outs and all the things that I used to do on the old registry system and how you do them on this one without having to call the owner every hour. So once I get through that hump, we'll hopefully be at a better place. The books were delayed nationwide, the indie and Marvel books, and that happened with every comic shop. So on top of the Wednesday madness that normally happens to anyone that doesn't have Facebook or Instagram and keeps up with the comic shop's update, some of those Wednesday warriors were still coming in on Wednesday morning while we were trying to count books and get everything out there and do all the Wednesday stuff that normally happens. So that meant extra, transactions that we rang through, a lot of juggling. It was very chaotic. So that's a Diamond thing. They said they had delays at the printers, and it was every comic shop, and DC books were not affected because they go through a different distributor. They're no longer with Diamond. So I don't know what happened with Jeppy that week, but hopefully this is the last delay for a while, because they were delayed last week too. But just everything kind of piled on this week on my end.
See, this was DC's ultimate plan. They pulled away from Diamond, and now they're starting to sabotage.
Right. This is the ongoing war between Jeppy and DC Comics and the Russians and every other.
Jeppy's over there like, yeah, it was just the printers. The printers they came unplugged or something.
What a vague
Are you
reason.
sure nobody like destroyed your warehouses?
Someone blew up one of the printing factories and started
Quote
to slow
unquote
them
printing factories.
down. Right. Printing money. I mean, comics.
The Archies and the Batmans, not the Benjamins and the Washingtons.
Good job, Mr. Jeppy. We're rooting for you, though.
Yeah,
Pulling through.
Just get him here on time.
We're
next
on your
week,
side.
please.
Yeah. How about you? How's your work or home life been?
Work has definitely calmed down. I worked the other morning and it just felt like I could breathe, which was nice. You know, we're definitely and always thankful for the business, right? I'm
Sure.
so happy and glad that we did the business that we did over the holidays and even where we are now, because it shows that we're doing something right and it's keeping us in business. Obviously, we're able to do what we need to do and I can take care of the people and give hours. And I'm so thankful for that. But it was nice to just have a normal day where people were getting their one coffee and their one pastry, and it wasn't, you know, a $50 order every single time. And, you know, I had opportunity not just to do the one task that I was doing, which was warming up food. It's my favorite spot. I just stand by the oven. I'm like, but I was able to do that and do something else and step and look on my computer and answer an email and do something else. And, you know, pull stuff out of the fridge and sticker and whatever else I need to do. So it was nice just to have that moment to be like, okay. And it felt so easy comparatively. Whereas a year ago, I'd been like, oh man, we're so busy. And now it's just like, yeah, chilling. 60 transactions in a half hour. Whatever. This is nothing.
It's that breather, right?
Right. So that was so nice.
Part of that, too, is kids going back to school in the area. So that helps out with, all right, so in the mornings, we can take care of our tasks, do what we normally need to do. And then the afternoons, as kids get out of school and as parents get out of work, that's when you get the couple of rushes in the afternoon, too.
Beyond that, I mean, work's been pretty mild. Obviously, there's always issues with one of my employees, something going on. So handling that one at a time. But I've really been trying to focus on, okay, if something comes up on my day off and it's work related, I'm going to take the time and focus on that task and get it. And then got to switch off my brain and, you know, go back to what I was doing, relaxing, spending time with family, etc. Because I found that I was trying to take the whole day for that. And if I had to focus on something for work, now my whole day was ruined because I had to take that time out for work. And now I'm like, no, I can focus this 30 minutes and then go back to what I was doing and it'll be fine. For my personal life, I had some great days off with Leo. He's cute, but he's also 3. And so by the end of day 5, I was very ready to go back to work and get that space and get that me time.
Sure.
Because everything is, Bo.
That's his word for no, by the way.
Yes. And, you know, I'll step into the other room for something and it's ba, 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 which is mom. Ba, 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 ba. Yes, Leo. Ba, 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 ba. And he does it until I walk in the room. And then he'll say something like, soft blankie. Well, he's under the soft blankie. Like, what does he want? So while I do love our little boy and enjoy spending time with him, I am not meant to be a stay-at-home mother ever. At any point in my life, I can say that with confidence.
It's a tough role, and many props to those that do stay-at-home parents. You're amazing. Good job.
100%.
You did sneak into the Brocat block. My favorite thing about Kelli, and that relates to what you just said, and that's the fact that you can be an amazing mother and an amazing manager at your work. And, you know, I kind of see that and I see like, oh, that's how I eventually could be doing these things. And as you get better at it, I'm like, okay, maybe I can get a little bit better at it. So now you're helping me out as well.
That was wonderful. I've snuck so many of those in there. It's the first time you've ever said it. I did also put in there, though, I had a funny story from this week. So every Sunday morning I go and I have breakfast with my parents. And my mom's very religious. So she plays her contemporary Christian Pandora playlist, right? Whatever is just playing. And so we're all having this nice family breakfast last Sunday. And we're eating, and Holy from Justin Bieber comes on. Have you ever heard that song? The chorus goes something along the lines of, you make me feel holy, 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 something about going to an altar, da-da-da, I don't know. And it comes on, and I'm like, why are they playing Justin Bieber? Mom listens for a second. She's like, oh, well, this is contemporary Christian. They're just playing these nice Christian songs. And I go, Mom, he's singing about sleeping with his girl makes him feel holy. Like the whole song is about banging. And she was like, oh, well, somebody just must not have known. I'm like, whoever, they knew. Nobody didn't know. If you listen to the lyrics and the guy rapping in the middle of it, you clearly know. But they just kept on rolling. And I was like, okay.
What's the rule where if you change, you can turn Christian music into romantic music by changing the word God to like him or her or boyfriend, girlfriend?
100%. That's all it is. They're just romance songs.
I will say I am kind of surprised and proud of the Jason Collard tweet that I put up a couple of days ago, and it's still going. Like, it's still getting some likes and retweets, but it's pretty much pleading to Jason Collard of HBO Max that I used FaceApp and put his face over the Bruce scene where he's being spoken to by the Flash, and we're all telling him it's Zack Snyder. Zack is the key, and he can save the Snyderverse. And there's another one that's going to go up of him in Superman's body, and us saying you can save them all, the whole Snyderverse from Man of Steel. And I'm sure he's going to see it at some point. He hasn't been active since the Wonder Woman 1984 launch, but it did awesome. So if any of you are out there and you retweeted and liked it, thank you so much. I hope that got his attention and kind of told him that we're all there to back him up, and he is, one of our many hopes. And Zack Snyder is that thing that's going to really help out HBO Max because we're all behind it.
I don't think I have anything else.
I'm still looking for my stimulus check.
Oh,
by
yeah,
the way.
we're still waiting.
So if anyone's listening that is in charge of that,
money. Yeah, somebody who's in charge of stimulus checks is listening.
You never know. But,
okay, well, if we're just talking to people in charge, I would love Bridgerton season 2, please.
All right. Well, it's possible. Someone out there could maybe. It's coming.
Of course it is. It's in the top 5 most watched Netflix original series.
All right, what if they told you the final season of Lucifer or Bridgerton season 2? You can only pick one. The other one never gets made.
The final season of Lucifer.
Wow. All right.
I do like Bridgerton a lot, but I also have 8 books that I can read. And I've read 2 of them already. I'm proud of I've read 4 books this week. Are you proud of me? That's not okay.
I mean, that's a lot of reading, but all right, that's fine.
I read very quickly.
Yeah. Plus, you're more invested in Lucifer now, especially after all these years, and you have 1 season of Bridgerton.
Well, and again, Bridgerton, I have the book, so I want to find out what happens to the characters. I just read them, and I'm okay. Lucifer, are they going to make me a book for the last season? Probably not.
And I think that about does it, Brocat Core. I do want to point out, as you've already noticed on this episode, and I did give a little hint on Twitter, but this episode has all new jingles, bumpers that we got, and the link is Alex Bassist Guy, who came back and he initially did our opening and our closing from, I think, 2 years ago or so, but I brought him back on to do the project of having original music fully for our jingles on the episode. I just felt like we needed to elevate the show once again, especially in this new year, and just kind of bring that. It's something that I've been wanting to do where they all sort of sound like they fit in the same thing. And that's what he was going with. He wanted it to fit with the opening and the closing. He was able to listen to those again years later and say, all right, here's these that I came up with. And I'm really happy with them. And I'm curious to hear what you all think, but obviously it'll take some time to get used to. I know some of you are probably used to the older ones, and I know I am, but as I hear this over and over again, it just gives it all a more unifying feel, episode to episode. So huge thanks once again for tuning in, whether it's your first episode or your over 400th one. We really appreciate that you came out today.
As always, you can reach out to us on Twitter at ReasonsI'mBroke, at Kelli, spelled with an I.
But for a link on everywhere you can find us, head on over to thereasonsi'mbroke.com.
As always, I am your Emperor Kelli.
And I am Mystery Trooper Daniel.
And Brocat Core.
All will be well. Next week, we will have a guest episode. I don't even want to call it a guest episode because these are friends that I've known for years, but Bobby and Macy are going to come back to do an episode all about the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S and Series X. And we're going to, they're going to be talking to me, as it is true that I know nothing about these consoles. I've seen people play the games and everything, but I don't have either console, and I haven't been keeping up on it as closely as all of you. So they're going to be on, they're going to be helping to do this special episode, since Palpa Kelly and I will be taking a very short vacation on the following week. So that'll be a nice episode to put out and to really catch everyone up on that video game talk that I know we could always use some more of. And I'm glad that I can have these guys on who know way more than you and I combined on these new systems.
It's a friendisode.
That's a good name for it. Yeah, friendisode.
Look at me. Look at me. I came up with that right after you said it was a friend episode. I was like, boom, friendisode.
The only downside is now I'm thinking of Friends, which is the mortal enemy of Seinfeld, and I'm on the Seinfeld side. So
okay, my mind did not go there. I was just thinking about your friends who are now on this episode that we're going to hear next week.
Can we call it the Sign episode?
No, that makes no sense.
Doesn't work.
It'd have to be a signed-isode.
That makes more sense.
But it still doesn't make sense. Who are you all in Seinfeld then? Who's Elaine?
Well, none of us are terrible people like the main cast of the Seinfeld show were. Like, if you watch them, they were just awful characters, but they were hilarious. So we would be the people getting wronged all around them. Okay. I'd be the guy that George accidentally gets. I don't know if he gets him deported. He gets him fired. The guy that says, Paquita.
Why are you that one?
What do you think?